The world has been hit by several natural disasters like hurricanes, cyclones, and typhoons in the past few decades. While destructive, these events have had minimal impact on global infrastructure collapse, mainly because so much has been learned on the road to recovery. Unfortunately, this will not be the case when dealing with what lies ahead, especially threats of the near future, particularly black sky hazards. A black sky hazard is a dire event that disrupts the normal functioning of our critical infrastructures in multiple regions for long durations, specifically a power grid collapse. This multi-region power grid collapse will cripple our lifeline infrastructure, starting from electricity blackouts to food and water shortage, sewage pileup, financial system collapse, and total communication, transportation, healthcare, and defense systems shutdown. According to the Electric Infrastructure Security Council, EIS, a global power grid collapse will result in an estimated $90 trillion in infrastructure damage. One of the most common misconceptions about why storms knock out power is that the outage comes from lightning striking the power lines or poles. Even when lightning strikes a power line, it is mainly trapped and earthed by a thunder arrestor. However, storms knock out power supply due to one main culprit, which are trees. Animals also constitute a considerable chunk of power outages. In the US, over 1,000 outages happen yearly due to animal-related failures, and about 11% of all outages are caused by squirrels. Human error and overload also contribute to blackouts or brownouts. Like car accidents involving vehicles hitting utility poles, technicians digging the wrong spot and hitting underground lines, or even during hot months when too many air conditioners operating at the same time and loading down the lines are all known causes of widespread blackouts. Other common causes of blackouts and brownouts are terrorism, which occurs when a group targets power lines or hacks into power grid control systems, and low water levels in hydroelectric dams, which may arise partly due to poor maintenance or droughts. So what happens when the power grid collapses due to a geomagnetic storm causing a solar wind shock wave or a coronal mass ejection that interferes with the Earth's magnetic field? In September 1859, the largest recorded geomagnetic storm, known as the Carrington Event, shut down parts of the U.S. telegraph network, started fires, and in some reported cases, gave telegraph operators electric shocks. Also, in 1989, a geomagnetic storm energized ground-induced currents that disrupted electric power distribution throughout a large part of Quebec and caused auroras as far down south as Texas. If a geomagnetic storm on the scale of the September 1859 incident occurred today, it would cause trillions of dollars in damages to satellites, power grids, and radio communications, leading to blackouts on a massive scale that might not be rectified for months or even years. This will lead to prolonged power outages, threaten food production, disrupt communication and global navigation satellite systems, and cause satellites to change orbits, slowly fall, and eventually burn up in space. High-energy particles penetrating living cells can also cause chromosome damage, cancer, and skin problems. Scientists have also suggested that solar storms could induce whales to beach themselves while migrating for breeding and feeding. Animals that use magnetoreceptors to navigate, such as birds and honeybees, are also affected. The immediate impact of a solar geomagnetic storm is a brownout or outright blackout. Brownouts are partial outages, while blackouts are a complete shutdown of electricity. Once the power grid shuts down, you will not be able to reach family or friends on your cell phone, as there will be no active cell phone coverage even if your phone is fully charged. In addition, communication satellites orbiting space that relies on spaceflight operators on the Earth to control their courses will collide after losing contact with Earth. Hospitals and intensive care units across the globe will suffer immense casualties. Dialysis machines, ventilators, electrocardiogram, ultrasound, X-ray machines, and surgical lights will not function. Thus, medical staff will be under tremendous pressure to keep patients alive and sustain the healthcare infrastructure. There will be an increased need for generators running on hydrocarbons, coal, natural gas, or nuclear fission. There will also be a spike in our dependence on alternative power sources such as solar, wind, geothermal, tidal, hydro, and biomass. The economic, industrial, and financial systems as we know it will completely collapse due to the loss of power supply. There will be little or no manufacturing going on, and the supply chain system will grind to a halt. Without a functional furnace or heat pump supplying heat, people in colder regions would rely on primitive methods to keep warm. In addition, there will be a shortage of clean water as purifying plants have shut down. The sewage system will also take a hit as waste will pile up in houses due to plumbing issues, leading to a large-scale health crisis. Soon, there will be chaos on the street, ranging from looting to outright anarchy, all due to the power grid collapse. So what can you do if a solar geomagnetic storm brings down the power grid? First, locate your family, friends, and loved ones. Be sure none of them is in an elevator, on a subway, or on a plane yet to land. Then, pick up your kids from school and grab supplies if you can still drive or walk to the store. Hopefully, it's still open. Stock up non-perishables, such as canned and dried food, since your refrigerator will not be working. ATMs and banks may not operate without electricity, so get as much cash as possible. Hopefully, your immediate community has not plunged into chaos leading to an economic collapse that will make your local currency lose its value as a legal tender. Water will be your next concern. Each individual in your household will need about 4 liters of water each day. Fill up every empty container and jugs, including sinks, bathtub, wash basin, hot tub, and even pools. Store rainwater in big buckets or rain barrels. Consider packing up and camping close to freshwater sources and get water purifiers and filters. Your next plan is to feed yourself and your family. Stores may run out of food with the possible disruption to the food supply. If you cannot grow your own food, you will have to save the ones you already have for as long as possible. Consume fruits, vegetables, and perishable foods in your fridge first before they start to decay. You may need 6 months of food per person in your household at the bare minimum. A year's worth of food supply for each person would be ideal. Next is how to handle business when nature calls. For example, water used once for hand washing can be reused for sewage drainage. Get some wet wipes and toilet paper to clean up, and use a folding commode with a bucket or garbage bags to save water. After a year, there should be a self-sufficient plan, particularly growing, raising, hunting, and foraging your own food. Get seeds and start gardening by planting weather-specific or season-specific plants as soon as possible. With all these said, we are yet to consider other lifeline infrastructures impacted by a global power grid collapse, such as security and social services. So before joining that angry mob on the street when a solar storm hits us, try to reduce your dependence and reliance on the electrical power grid and prepare for its inevitable collapse.